Welcome to Second Life Upcycling. In this practical and beginner-friendly sewing tutorial, I'll show you how I upcycle old duvet covers into dresses. This style is a cool summer dress pattern with a relaxed fit that you can make to your size and fit requirements. An old duvet cover is perfect for this project because there's lots of fabric to work with. Let's get started. The first step is to determine your top measurements and where you want the top to end. Do you want the top to end under the bust, like a princess line dress, or at your waist? Remember to measure the largest area, whether that's around your bust or tummy. Because there is not going to be a zip, the top has to be wide enough to get it on and off. Measure from your shoulders down to where you want the top section to end, whether this is below your bust or to your waist. Add extra for seam allowance. The duvet cover that I've chosen for this project, I picked up for a few dollars from my local thrift store. It's got a pretty flower design and a border at the bottom. Best of all, it's got a frill all the way around that I'll be able to use for the sleeves and save the leftovers for another project. Whenever you're cutting off a frill from fabric, make sure you leave enough fabric to attach the frill to your next project. Always cut more than you think that you'll need. Then we need to make a pattern for the top section. Halve the measurements that you took previously, and this will form the pattern for the top. This is easier than many people think. I tend to use a top that I like as a base for the sleeve and neckline. Because I wanted the top of this dress to be lined, I cut 2 identical pieces for each section. I had 4 pieces of fabric for each pattern template. This means the top won't be see-through. It also gives it more stability. After cutting out the top sections, I sew these together inside out to form 2 pieces. I leave a section open so I can turn them right side in. Now I have 2 top pieces, one for the front and one for the back. Next, I sew the top of the shoulders and side seams together, and we've got a top. Next, we want to cut a slit in the top of the middle of the back so we can get the dress on and off over our head. Find the center and cut straight down. I cut about 10 centimeters or 2 inches. If you're not sure, cut a little bit at a time, testing whether or not you can get it over your head. Then hem and sew each side of the cut to neaten it up. Then add a button and an elastic loop to close the opening when you're wearing the dress. Now we move on to the skirt measurements, and you need to consider whether you want a straighter skirt or a fuller skirt. First, measure the length you want the skirt. If you made a top that finishes at the waist, measure from the waist to where you want the bottom of the skirt. If you've done a princess line, measure from there. It might be easier if you put the top on to take these measurements. Add more for seam allowance. And remember, it's easier to remove fabric to make something smaller than the other way around. Next, measure the biggest part of your lower body. For some, this will be the hips and butt. For others, it might be the stomach or thighs. When taking your waist measurement, be generous to allow for gathering. This is the key to this dress and skirt design. If you want lots of gathers, add more to your waist measurement. Finally, quarter these measurements, and this will give you the measurements for the front section and the back section of the skirt. Using the measurements taken above, cut out your skirt pattern template. Then cut 2 sections of fabric long enough and wide enough for the front and back skirt pieces. Fold these pieces of fabric in half, laying them on top of each other with the folds together. Lay your pattern template on top and cut both pieces at the same time. This gives you two identical pieces, one for the front and one for the back of the skirt. Then join these together by sewing the two side seams, and we've got our skirt. Now, the next section is a little tricky to explain, but easy to do. On your machine, a few centimeters or an inch in from the top waist seam, sew 2 rows of gathering or basting stitch. This is the longest stitch length. First, I recommend practicing on an offcut of fabric first before doing it on the dress. To get an even row, I line up the fabric with one of the notches on my machine footer plate. Start sewing at one of the side seams. Important, do not backstitch. Stop when you reach the next side seam, pull out and cut off lots of thread. Start again on the other side of the seam, again stopping when you reach the next seam. Again, leave lots of thread at the ends. Now, to create the gathers, separate the top and bottom threads, which will be the cotton reel and the bobbin threads. Holding the bottom bobbin threads together, you should be able to slide or gather the fabric. The goal of the gathering at the top of the skirt is to get it to the same width as the bottom of your top. It takes a little bit of adjusting to get it right the first time, but this gets easier the more you practice. Once you're happy with the gathering and it matches the width of the top, take the skirt over to the sewing machine and sew over the gathering pleats to secure them in place. Make sure to return your stitch length back to the normal setting. And then I pin the skirt to the bottom of the top, hiding the gathering stitch underneath the hem of the top, so all you're going to see is the gathers, no stitching. I then top stitch the top to the skirt on the sewing machine. And finally, we just need to finish off the bottom hem. The fabric of the duvet cover I used to make this dress had a border which I used for the bottom of my hem. I was able to use the straight line of the bottom of the border to cut a nice even hemline. Because I had the ready-made frill that I had cut from the duvet cover in the beginning, I decided to sew this around the armholes. And here it is finished. This is a relatively simple dress to make that doesn't require complex zips or tricky elastic. Because it's made to measure, you can make it as loose or tight as you want, just as long as you can get it over your head and the widest part of your body. That's why the initial measurements are important, adding extra so it can be taken in if needed. Thanks so much for watching. I hope I explained the steps simply enough. I'm currently working on a few different styles of simple to sew dresses like this, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss them. If you want to see more tutorials like this, please throw me a thumbs up. It really helps. See you next time.